Hi everyone, welcome to another Draw With Me style video. I've been really enjoying making these, and it does get a little bit easier each time to record myself talking and hear my own voice when I edit. For this drawing, I'm using the same materials I usually do. I'm drawing on Bristol board paper. This one is by Strathmore, but the brand doesn't really matter. I've got my trusty drawing pencil. It's a little dull, which is perfect. I never want my sketching pencil to be too sharp because it might leave indents in the paper and be difficult to erase. I use a 6B because it has a softer tip, but it could still indent the paper if it's too sharp or if I press too hard. And of course, I'm working with micron pens. Today we are drawing a snake, or I don't know about you, I am drawing a snake, specifically my pet snake Jezero. If you're not into snakes at all, I'm so sorry. I'm going to be talking about him and snakes in general a lot in this one. He is a ball python. I've had him since May, and I'm ridiculously happy that he's in my life. I'm working off of a reference photo of him laying on my bed in this kind of loopy position. In my opinion, it was practically begging to be drawn. For artistic purposes, I did kind of round out the shape that he's in to make it look a little bit more fluid and stylized, but I really haven't changed it very much at all. I'm not going to stress too hard about making sure that all of his markings are 100% accurate in the drawing, mostly because I'm the only person that would notice if they were off, and it's not worth it to me to care that much. I'm adding some flowers around the outside of him just for aesthetic purposes. I have like 100 photos of flowers on my phone, so I picked a few pictures I took of a rose bush I saw on a night out in college, or at least I think they're roses. My flower identification skills are questionable at best. I ended up being really happy that I had planned on drawing the flowers around the outside of him though, because about halfway through this drawing, this paper got stained. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it in the footage, but I must have flicked something onto it or something. There were 3 little marks on the page, but luckily flowers covered up 2 of them for me. Well, it was partly luck. I did definitely shift one of the flowers with the sole intention of covering up one of the marks, but whatever, it worked out. I also did the flowers off camera. This was just to speed up the drawing process a little bit because it meant that I could work on them at night and not have to worry about filming them. I tried to make them more distinct from Jezero by drawing them with a different pen. So they're both drawn with microns, but Jezero is drawn with a size 02, and the flowers are done with a smaller 005. I thought that it would give the drawing a little bit more dimension. You can be the judge of how well you think that turned out. Maybe it's not that noticeable, but I think I like the effect. Since I'm going to be drawing Jezero this whole video, I thought I would talk a little bit about why on earth I got a pet snake in the first place instead of like a cat or a dog. I was never really into snakes as a kid. I had a dog when I was growing up, and I had absolutely zero experience with any reptiles until I was in college. Then I worked a museum job where we had a few animals: turtles, toads, a couple lizards, and 2 ball pythons. Pretty much from the get-go, the staff I interviewed with were like, "We have these animals, but you can choose how little or how much you want to interact with them." Pretty quickly, I got used to handling one of the lizards, which was an elderly and very sedentary bearded dragon. I got comfortable getting her out of her tank and either perching her on my shoulder or sitting with her on my lap and letting people pet her and answering really basic questions like how old is she, what does she eat, etc. But I think I had been working there for at least a year before I decided I wanted to interact with the ball pythons in a more meaningful way than just pouring water into their bowls. One of my coworkers was more experienced with them, and would occasionally get them out and hold them, so I ended up asking her to train me. One of the snakes was a little bit more chill than the other, so we decided to start with that one. And the very first time, I remember being so terrified to scoop her out of the tank. So my coworker got her out and I pet her for a few minutes first. I got used to how her scales felt and everything, and then my coworker kind of looped her over my forearms. If you've never held a snake before, it's kind of hard to describe. You don't grip them at all. In my experience holding ball pythons, sometimes they move around a lot, so you kind of just have to let them slide through your hands and keep readjusting to make sure their weight is supported. It was really, really weird at first, I'm not gonna lie, but I did enjoy it, and so over the next few weeks, I wanted to continue working on getting more comfortable with them. So I practiced getting them out of their tanks. I eventually held the other ball python we kept too. From what I remember, the snakes were donated to the museum after being classroom pets. I'm not really sure if they came to the museum at the same time or not, but they were really comfortable around people. They weren't shy, they never flinched away from being pet, they never hissed or anything, and they were really curious. And over time, it became one of the most enjoyable parts of my shift when I would get out one of the ball pythons and let kids ask me questions. And adults. I had a lot of adults tell me that they were trying to overcome their fear, and a lot of time the adults had just as many questions for me as the kids. And obviously I was really, really cautious about how I let visitors interact with them, but it was super fun. I got super comfortable with the snakes. I would let them sit on my shoulders or around my neck while I was working, and I began to wish that I had one of my own. At this point, I was a senior in college, living in a really crappy apartment that definitely didn't allow pets, so it was out of the question, but I told myself that once I was graduated and living somewhere better, I would get a pet ball python. So then, after I graduated, my husband and I moved to Seattle together. It took us some time to adjust to living here, but after a while, I eventually decided that I was ready. I had stable income and enough savings to properly care for one, and I had done extensive research. At the museum, I interacted with the ball pythons frequently, but I was just working part-time and I wasn't responsible for a lot of their care, so I still had a lot to learn if I was going to have one of my own. But I did that and I began looking. I didn't really want to buy from a breeder or anything. I wanted to adopt, so I looked for people that were trying to rehome their snakes. And I found a listing online, someone that loved their ball python and took good care of him, but due to their circumstances, they just couldn't keep him anymore. I reached out, my husband and I drove over to pick him up, and basically that's how I got Jezero. That was at the end of May this year, so I've had him for 3.5 months now. I always thought that if I got a pet, I might feel kind of conflicted about changing its name, but that definitely was not the case for Jezero. I already forget what his previous owner had called him, but I didn't really like it too much, and I immediately decided that I was going to change it. I didn't feel bad about it because he's a snake and has no earthly concept of having a name. He doesn't even have ears, so that was that. It took me a couple days to settle on Jezero. I talked in one of my other drawing videos, I think it was the Pillars of Creation one, about my background with outer space stuff. And Jezero is kind of a space nerd name. It's the name of a crater on Mars, and it was the landing site for NASA's Mars 2020 mission that landed the Perseverance rover and Ingenuity helicopter. The crater is thought to have once been a lake, and in several languages, Jezero means lake, hence the name. I know that saying Jezero with the J sound is like an anglicized pronunciation. I think it's supposed to sound more like Yezero. But in my classes and when I've heard scientists discussing it in the context of the NASA mission, it's often said as Jezero, so that's how I named him. But again, he's a snake with no ears, so him having a name at all is really only to serve my own purposes anyway. Some people are freaked out or grossed out at the idea of having a snake as a pet, which I get it. I can understand that. It can be really weird, especially if you don't have any experience with them. Sometimes, even with Jezero, when he moves faster than I'm expecting, it freaks me out in a way that I don't get freaked out with cats or dogs. It's just kind of something you have to get used to, but I absolutely love him and I'm so happy I have him. Ball pythons are also really low maintenance to keep once you get their enclosure set up. That's a question I've gotten before, if Jezero just kind of roams about the house. No, he does not do that. He lives in a tank. Ball pythons are cold-blooded, so it's important that he lives somewhere temperature regulated. I have heat sources that keep his tank at the right temperature for him, but he's not super delicate, by which I mean he's not going to suffer when I take him out of the tank and handle him for a bit. A lot of people also ask me what he eats. He eats rats. You can buy them frozen at a pet store. It's kind of gross, but you get used to it. Plus, ball pythons don't eat every day, so it's not like you have to do it all the time. Another question I get asked is, what does he do all day? And the answer is mostly either sleeping or hiding. Ball pythons are largely nocturnal, so he's mostly only active at nighttime, but I'm a night owl, so I enjoy getting to see him wake up and start moving around. I've also been asked a few times if he bites, and no, he has never bitten, never hissed at me either. He's a little bit shy, but unless I really startled him or scared him or anything, he would never bite me at all. It's also just not dangerous. He's not venomous or anything, and his teeth are really tiny. Like, it would probably hurt, but so does a cat or a dog bite. So it's not something I ever really worry about. I feel like I've learned so much by having him as a pet, which is really cool. I work with kids pretty often, and Jezero is a really easy conversation topic. I love answering people's questions about him, and I've been wanting to do a drawing of him for a while. So I'm glad that I finally got the chance to do this one, but not gonna lie, this one did get a little bit tedious. The footage is sped up quite a bit, but the total drawing time for this one was about 6 hours. I don't have the patience or attention span to do that all at once, so you can probably tell by my changing sleeves and the changing lighting that I filmed this over a span of several days. The next time I film one of these style videos, I want to do it either in a different spot or at least find a different angle that works. I'm getting a little bit bored of seeing this setup. I don't have a usable desk anymore, which, funny story, I did have a desk, and now that's where Jezero's tank setup lives. So I've just been drawing at my coffee table, but I'll have to see what I can do to change it up. But anyway, I think this is enough of me rambling on. If there's still any drawing footage left, I'll crank up the music a little bit. If you're watching this, you probably came from my Instagram, but if you didn't, it's linked in the description. This drawing is already posted there, and I also have a highlight reel that's just Jezero, so please feel free to check it out. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
Can I inch the flower into view?
What? Sure. Thanks for that.
I needed to give you some color.
Oh, okay.